People only watch certain shows or movies once, but some will always have a special place in their minds. Fans get to know and love people so well that we feel like we know them personally and understand their flaws and strengths. What drama and grudges are hidden when the curtains come down and the cameras stop rolling? This is true for any popular show. What does Ron's strange dislike of Opie mean? Are there deeper secrets below the surface? Come with us as we look into why Ron Howard really hated him. All the stars were in the right place. From 1960 to 1968, The Andy Griffith Show had many guest stars as well as regular group members. Some were well known before they showed up, while others became famous afterward. The Andy Griffith Show was an American sitcom TV show with stars like Don Knotts and Andy Griffith. Between October 3, 1960 and April 1, 1968, the show aired 8 times on CBS. Episodes 1 through 159 were shown in black and white. The last 90 shows were colored. The show never came in lower than 7th in the monthly Nielsen ratings, and when it was over, it was number 1. The Andy Griffith Show takes place in the made-up town of Mayberry, North Carolina, which is a quiet country area. The show is about Sheriff Andy, who is named after its star. Andy Griffith plays Taylor, a police officer whose careful and sensible approach to life and his job always stops small crooks from causing trouble in his area. A lot of the sheriff's time is spent keeping the people of the town from hurting themselves by their own mistakes. The show plays with common ideas about small town and rural life. Mayberry is mostly made up of simple country people, like gas station attendant Gomer Pyle, Jim Neighbors, and town drunk Otis Hal Smith, who locks himself in jail after his weekly binge and lets himself out when he gets sober. Taylor's helper, Deputy Barney Fife, his excited cousin played by Don Knotts, is the one who always gets things wrong. Usually the pair's problems get worse when they use bad strategies. Knotts was great in the part and won 4 Emmys for it before leaving the show in 1965 and being replaced by Jack Burns. Other common plots involve Taylor's care for his fishing mad son Opie, played by Ron Howard, and his worries about his unmarried aunt and maid, Aunt Bee, played by Frances Bavier. The Andy Griffith Show was part of a bigger trend on TV in the 1960s that featured funny and lighthearted country characters and themes. 2 different shows based off of the show came out: Gomer Pyle, USMC, between 1964 and 1969, and Mayberry, RFD, between 1968 and 1971. During the 8 seasons of the show, neither Griffith nor the show won any awards. However, co-stars Knotts and Bavier got a total of 6 Emmys. A spin-off called Gomer Pyle USMC was made from the show in 1964-1969, and a return TV movie called Return to Mayberry back in 1986. But how did the star group get along with each other? Who was mad at whom and why? Allow us to walk you through the specifics. The Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968, but fans still love it and are interested in what went on behind the scenes. Yes, the good old 1960s show had a lot of fun stuff going on behind the scenes, mostly with Andy Griffith, who was the show's boss. How did Andy seem? Andy loved pulling practical jokes on people. Even though Griffith played the straight man on the show, he was a big fan of pulling jokes. Often, Griffith would wake up his friend Knotts from a nap by dropping a metal film frame on the floor. He wasn't the only one whose nap was cut short, though. George Goober Lindsay woke up from a nap one time to find Griffith had strung duck guts all over his dressing room. Andy was pranked right back by the group, who stole his shoes one time. After work that day, he had to wear his big sheriff boots home. It was easy to laugh at the cast of The Andy Griffith Show, and it showed in the TV shows. In the Runaway Kid episode, Opie and his friends pulled a joke on Sheriff Taylor by moving his car in front of a fire hydrant. This got him a ticket. The deal for Don Knotts to be on the show was only for one episode. His character wasn't meant to be a regular on the show, but after the first day, executive Shlodon Leonard, a producer, became very interested in the friendship between Knotts and Griffith. So he gave him a contract for 1 year that turned into a deal for 5 years. They wrote the theme song, which was called The Fishin' Hole and was written by Earl Hagen and Herbert Spencer. Hagen is the person singing the tune. The song doesn't have words in the show, but it did have words. Griffith even wrote down the song and its words. Ron Howard was not able to throw a rock into the lake. He was called Ronnie back then. During the show's opening theme song, Ron Howard and Griffith can be seen walking along a lake. He picks up a rock and throws it into the lake, but it looks like he didn't really do that. The cast and crew went to Los Angeles' Franklin Canyon to film the opening credits. They asked Howard, who was 6 years old at the time, to throw the rock, but it kept missing the lake. To make that famous splash, assistant director Bruce Bilson had a stuntman throw a rock at the same time. We hope Howard's arm is better now than it was then. The fake man threw the rock when Opie pretended to throw it. Look at the scene again. There may be a small delay between Opie's throw and the splash that follows. When the show finished, it was the most watched show on TV. That's a great way to end things. The other things that took place. The person who made the Andy Griffith Show didn't want Andy's name to be in the title of the show. Griffith said that the show's creator, Sheldon Leonard, felt bad about calling it after the star at one point. He just wanted to call it Mayberry. Mayberry used to be called something else. Before it became Mayberry, the town was called Mount Pilot. Andy himself agreed with this. Barb, Andy's real-life wife, had a small part on the Andy Griffith Show. See her in Barney, and the choir Frances Bavier played a different role in the pilot. She is best known for her role as Aunt Bee, but in the pilot she played Mrs. Henrietta Perkins, a widow from the area. She was the first female character on the Andy Griffith Show to wear pants. Peggy is Sheriff Andy's girlfriend who gets less attention than Ellie Walker and Helen Crump. She does have one claim to fame, though she was the first female character to wear pants in Opie's rival. Betty Lynn moved back to the real Mayberry. Lynn lived in L.A. until 2006. After making an appearance at Mayberry Days in Mount Airy, which used to be the city of Andy Griffith, which gave her ideas for Mayberry, she fell in love with the place. After someone broke into her home in L.A., she chose to move to the small town in North Carolina. Frances Bavier also set up home in a real town close to Mayberry. In 1972, not long after her last show on Mayberry RFD, Bavier sold his house in Hollywood and bought a house in Siler City, North Carolina, even though her TV shows were shot in California. I fell in love with North Carolina, all the pretty roads and the trees, Bavier said. Sheriff Andy has upside-down maps of Idaho and Nevada behind his desk. Hey, that's not North Carolina. Andy Griffith long denied that the made-up town of Mayberry was based on his hometown of Mount Airy, North Carolina. In the episode called A Black Day for Mayberry, Barney picks up a phone book from the sheriff's desk and starts flipping through its pages. The words Mount Airy are clearly printed on the front cover. It looks like the real phone book for Mount Airy, North Carolina. There is one thing that wasn't revealed, though. To this day, the man who played Sheriff Andy, the person known as Mr. Schwamp, is still a mystery. He or she can be seen in 26 episodes of Mayberry and in 2 Mayberry RFD and Gomer Pyle, USAMC episodes. The extra also shows up in the movie Christmas in Connecticut. A few years ago, as an April Fool's joke, a Tags fan club said they would reveal the man's real identity. The actress who played Mayberry was actually Dawn Knotts. For years, Nice Dress Nellie was just as mysterious as Mr. Schwamp. It turned out that Nice Dress Nellie was the real marvel of the Andy Griffith Show. At the start of season 1, Andy would often call his partner in crime cousin Barney, but as the season goes on, they will no longer call each other by that name. Ange was Griffith's real nickname. Barney calls Andy Ange as a nickname on the show, but it's really interesting that Knotts called Griffith that in real life. Just mix Andy and Griffith as a word. Griffith and Knotts were not at all like their characters. Andy was known to be more. Fans will find it interesting that their real lives were very different from what they showed on TV. For example, Knotts was actually a pretty serious guy. At the beginning of the theme song reel, Andy and his son Opie walk to the end of the water. Andy nods his head in approval when the boy says, "Good job." There's more to this simple action than meets the eye. It turns out that Griffith's real father would shake his head in the same way to show approval. Ron Howard's father, Rance Howard, was also an actor in both TV and movies. He and his son had a great relationship, and Ron said that Andy and Opie's relationship was built on the influence his dad had on his own life. Howard liked getting his family together, and he would work with his father whenever he could. From what we saw on the show, he had a great relationship with his dad. Andy Griffith's hidden talent, Griffith, who died Tuesday, started out as an actor. He was best known for playing Sheriff Andy Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, but he also loved music and played the slide trombone in the band at Grace Moravian Church in Mount Airy, NC. As a child, Griffith sang and played slide trombone in the band at Grace Moravian Church in Mount Airy, NC. He went to school for music and got a degree in music before teaching high school music. Griffith showed off his musical skills in 1958's Destry Rides Again, which earned him a Tony nomination for Best Actor in a Musical. He also sang in the 1957 movie A Face in the Crowd. Many episodes of the long-running CBS show The Andy Griffith Show featured Griffith singing. In 1998, Griffith talked about how music was always an important part of the show. Over the years, Griffith released albums with country and gospel music. A version of the Andy Griffith Show theme song with the original lyrics, called The Fishin' Hole, it's set to the tune of the show's catchy whistle, Only Opening, which Griffith didn't perform. Earl Hagen, who co-wrote the song, whistled the famous TV theme song. Griffith followed his love of music to Matlock, where he could be heard singing on different episodes of the legal drama that ran from 1986 to 1995. He put out a gospel record called I Love to Tell the Story 25 Timeless Hymns in 1996. It won a Grammy for Best Southern Gospel, Country Gospel, or Bluegrass Gospel Album. More awards for music came next. Griffith was introduced to the Country Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 1999. He then joined the Christian Music Hall of Fame and Museum in 2007, and it was only 4 years ago that the North Carolina native formed. She worked on the video for Brad Paisley's song Waitin' on a Woman Avic Hymn. The Country Music Association then gave it the Video of the Year award. Knott didn't get to go on, though. The cast and crew thought the show was over after the 5th season, but Knotts quickly found another job. But when Griffith showed up, when they asked Knotts to join for a 6th season, he agreed, but only if he could own some of the show. Griffith said no, and that's when Knotts chose not to come back because Barney Bavier hated her role. During the run of the show, Bavier had a love-hate relationship with her famous role. She felt like her dramatic skills weren't being used enough as an actor in New York City. However, after 8 seasons as Bea, She was the only original cast member to stay with the show in the spin-off, Mayberry R.F.D., for an extra 2 seasons. On the set of The Andy Griffith Show, Bavier was easily upset, so the production staff was careful about how they talked to her. Star of the show Andy Griffith once said that the two of them sometimes had problems during the run of the show. Griffith said that Bavier called him 4 months before she died and apologized for being difficult during the run of the show on Larry King Live on November 27, 2003. In an interview with Bill Ballard for Carolina Camera, Bavier said it is hard for an actor to create a role and become so well known for it that people no longer know who she is. All the attention she gets is for the role made on the screen. It was said that Aunt Bee on the show didn't have a good sense of humor. Bavier was born into a wealthy family in New York City and lived a fancy life. He went to Columbia University and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts before getting a job on The Andy Griffith Show. A lot of the time on the show, Andy and Frances had a tense relationship because she didn't like his jokes and he was a real nut. They made up before she died in 1989, which is good. In fact, Frances Bavier called Griffith not long before she died to say she was sorry for being difficult while shooting. That they were able to get back together shows that the group cared about each other, even if they didn't always show it. She played the part for 10 years and won an Emmy in 1967 for Outstanding Supporting Comedy Actress. Frances. After retiring in 1972, Bavier kept to herself until her death in 1989. She rarely left her big two-story home in Siler City, where she lived alone. The private actress spent most of her time in a big back room that wasn't very furnished, just a bed, a desk, a TV, and an end table with her glasses and black licorice on it. For her work as an actress in a supporting role in a comedy, Bavier got the Primetime Emmy Award in 1967. Many people who watched The Andy Griffith Show didn't know that Don and Andy's love relationship on the show came from the fact that they were friends in real life. Each of Andy Griffith and it was hard for Don Knotts to grow up during the Great Depression. Griffith was born and raised in North Carolina. His family was too poor to buy him a crib, so as a baby he slept in the drawers of a dresser. Knotts, on the other hand, grew up in West Virginia as one of 4 boys. One of the most memorable things about The Andy Griffith Show. The show starts with a sung tune and a picture of Andy and little Opie on their way to fish. Franklin Canyon Park, which is at the eastern end of the Santa Monica Mountains, is where the famous scene can be seen. Each cast member had a favorite show. For Andy Griffith, it was Barney's First Car from Season 3, in which Barney buys an old car with his life savings, but it doesn't work. The Ball Game, which was written by Ronnie Howard's father, Rance Howard, was his favorite episode. Rance Howard wrote and acted in 5 of the episodes. From 1960 to 1968, a crazy 249 episodes of The Andy Griffith Show were filmed over 8 seasons. This show, The Pickle Story, is one that many fans say is their favorite. The Switch Pickles Don Knotts loved it the most. Aunt Bee makes a lot of pickles in it, so it's so gross that Barney calls them kerosene cucumbers for some funny reason. Andy and Barney have to eat 8 jars of the gross pickles. The episode is full of funny parts, and it's clear that the men are having a good time while they're shooting it. Money for the chemists who make things. They liked how Andy and Don got along so much that they wrote up a job contract right then and there, first for 1 year, then for another 5 years. It was said that Griffith said the second episode was called Manhunt, and that's when I knew Don should be the funny one, and I should play straight for him. That was the deciding factor. The pair became one of the greatest in TV history. The Galaxy car was always different. The famous squad car that Andy and Barney used on the show was a Ford Galaxy. The show got a free new Galaxy from a nearby Ford shop every time a new model came out. After that, the dealer took back the old car, painted it again, and sold it. What a waste of time. The poor guy could have made a lot more money by selling the cars as they were. Such a lot of cars in one show. Over the course of the 8 seasons, 10 different Galaxies were used. There are a lot of copies out there now. At that time, Ford Motor Company mostly paid for the show, which is why the police cars were always Ford Galaxy 500 sedans. In the credits, Ford Motor Company is thanked for its part in the show. However, General Foods was the show's only sponsor for all of its years. Actor Jim Nabors played the likable jerk Gomer Pyle on the Jim Nabors show Mayberry. The character of Jim was given his own show after the Andy Griffith Show finished. Gomer Pyle, USMC, was the name of Nabors' spin-off show, in which Gomer joins the Marines. Jim was a great singer who put out 28 records over the course of his career. Andy and her partner played a couple on the show. It is said that Andy Griffith and actor Annetta Corsott were lovers outside of work, even though they aren't together on screen. At the time, he was married to Barbara, his first wife. Oh no. Andy finally split up with his wife in 1972. He married 2 more people after that, the Greek actor Solika Kisuto and the American singer Cindy Knight. Annetta, on the other hand, was never married and never had kids. As part of one of the cast's many jokes, a member of the crew dressed as a waiter went to Andy's hotel room to bring dinner, but while there he saw Andy and Annetta making out. Oh no. The joke was not well received. The Andy Griffith Show may have been the start of yet another famous Hollywood secret relationship in the 1960s, which wasn't that unusual either at the time. We only heard about Opie's mom once during the show, but we never saw her. In the episode called Wedding Bells for Aunt B, Andy starts to miss his mother and tells Opie how much he loves her. People never learn more about her or even see a picture of her. But in an episode of The Danny Thomas Show that led to, there is a story on the Andy Griffith Show that she died when Opie was the least little speck of a baby. The name Opie comes from a famous band leader in the 1930s and 1940s. Andy Griffith and the show's producer Sheldon Leonard loved Kate's music, so they chose to honor him. Ron Howard is now known as both Opie Taylor and Richie Cunningham. Ron Howard, the director, has won many awards for his work, including the National Medal of Arts. He was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 2013 and has 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. We'd say Opie has done pretty well for himself. He married writer Cheryl Alley in 1975, and they have 4 children together, 2 daughters and twin girls. Annetta Corsott went to school while she was acting. Helen Crump, played by Annetta Corsott, was Sheriff Andy Taylor's girlfriend on the show and was rumored to be dating Andy Griffith in real life. Corsott was a drama major at Northwestern University before she dropped out to become an actress. While the Andy Griffith Show was filming, Corsott continued her education at UCLA. Annetta didn't stop acting. She came back for 2 reunion shows, returned to Mayberry in 1986, and the Andy Griffith Show reunion in 1993. She also appeared on dozens of TV shows, including Gunsmoke, Rich Man, Poor Man, and The Runaways. She died of cancer in 1995 and is buried in Hollywood. Andy got Guillain-Barré syndrome in 1983, but fully recovered. He had 4 heart bypass surgeries and died of a heart attack in 2012. He was buried on his favorite island, Roanoke Island in North Carolina. Andy Griffith won many awards during his lifetime, including being inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 1991 and getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He is still one of the most beloved stars of his generation, And there is even a museum in North Carolina that has the world's largest collection of Andy Griffith memorabilia. The backstory that didn't work: if you watch the first few episodes of the show, you'll learn that Andy and Barney were cousins. The plan was to make fun of the stereotypical Southern relationships that help people get jobs in small-town government. After a few references to that relationship in the first season, it was dropped, and they were just friends since childhood. The angry big guy. Andy Griffith hit a wall in anger and broke his hand on the set of the show. His hand had to be heavily bandaged during filming. To explain the injury, the show's producers said that Sheriff Taylor had been hurt while arresting some criminals. That sounds a lot better than hearing that he punched a wall out of anger or frustration. Don Knotts had a signature look. Did you ever notice that Barney Fife always wore a white straw fedora with a salt and pepper coat and a red bow tie? In The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, the reluctant astronaut, the incredible Mr. Limpet, and How to Frame a Fig, Don Knotts wore that suit over and over again. It's nice to have a trademark, and now we know what Knotts thought was cool for a long time. Eleanor Donahue quit the show after one season because she didn't feel any chemistry with Andy Griffith on screen. Griffith would later say that he always had trouble showing affection during filming. Because of this, their relationship didn't feel real, so they broke up after one season to avoid having an unrealistic relationship that wasn't working for the show. The Andy Griffith Show didn't start until October 1960, but Andy and Opie first appeared in the pilot episode of Make. Both A Face in the Crowd and Room for Daddy were produced by Danny Thomas. The show started as a spin-off but quickly became a huge hit with millions of fans. In the end, it was the perfect time for the show. Andy, who owned half of the show, was working on movies instead of TV when Sheldon Leonard and Danny Thomas came up with the idea for his show. He had just finished A Face in the Crowd. No time for sergeants, and decided to give it a try, but only if he was given rights to 50% of the show that would carry his name and reputation. They agreed, and he ended up owning half of the show's rights. Andy Griffith was thought to be worth $60 million at the time of his death. He had bullets mailed to him, and Barney could only carry one bullet in his gun, because Andy didn't trust him with a full barrel. People who watched the show must have felt bad for his character because they sent Don Knotts bullets from all over the country. On the plus side, he never had to pay for his ammo when he went to the shooting range. On the minus side, Barney had a lot of guns. Opie the Dopey, Ron Howard, said he was picked on because he played Opie Taylor. My character's name, Opie, rhymes with dopey. I'd have to fight people, he said. Young Opie had to learn how to deal with mean kids on the Andy Griffith Show. His father was there to teach him how to stand tall, and by the end of the show, the crowd was filled with pride as they saw Opie turn into a respectable young Mayberry man. But it looks like the actor who played Opie wasn't a very popular kid, even though he was on the most famous TV show. In his 2012 book, Ron Howard, a biography, Hal Markovitz quotes Howard as saying that this was a tough time in his life. Howard said that he felt bad about being an actor around his friends. He said he never talked about his work on TV with other kids, so he wasn't proud of what he had done. It wasn't something to be talked about, Howard said next, adding that he did feel proud of the work. He felt like he had to hide it. It didn't matter how little he talked about Mayberry. The Andy Griffith Show was the #1 show in the country, so I always knew there was something I could do that was different, and that I could function in an adult setting. Thanks for seeing. Don't forget to click subscribe and like to see more movies.